Hey guys, I am here with Bernina again. I'm so excited about this episode. This is I've got Michaelynn Rose with me, who's the director of marketing. And then I also have Meg Goodman, who is the in charge of the podcast. I'm gonna say the voice of the podcast, but she's in charge of the podcast for Bernina called So and So. And we're gonna dig in today on a few things, but the biggest thing I want to talk about, or well, there are two things here. I'd love to chat about what is coming up, what's new, which Michaelynn is going to talk to us about, and then we're going to dig a little bit into long arms, which is kind of exciting for me. I don't own one, but I just love watching long armors on Instagram because they do amazing things. So, Michaelynn, do you want to kick it off for us and talk a little bit about like what's up and coming, or what are you doing that's so different?
Well, so many things. We're ever changing, right? We're always looking forward. We never look back. So we're trying to be the leader in many things. So talked a little bit last time about our air threading sergers. So we have our Burnett line, which we now have air threaders there, and super affordable. Going to change your life if even if you're a quilter, the what you can do with the serger is crazy. And then we have the Bernina side of it, which is the L series, which are just killer sergers. So the air threading for us is very new, but the thing that makes it different is you don't have to do it in any order. You can thread those needles in any order that you want. And when you push that through, you just push the pedal and it sucks the thread right in, and boom, your loopers are threaded. It's crazy. Um, and all the stuff you can do with that, we talked about that last time. But I think the most exciting thing is for the quilters out there and for the people who want to quilt, we have so many piecers, right? And they use their domestic machines and they do a straight stitch or whatever it is that's required to put their pieces together. So we have 7 millimeter or 9 millimeter machines, and we have 5 millimeter machines. A lot of our quilters, especially tiny piecers, like those 5 millimeter machines. And we just came out with the 735. And the 735, the five on the end of that means it's a 5 millimeter. That's an all-rounder machine. It's embroidery capable. It does everything. And the thing with Berninas is you can change your stitch, you can change your tension, you can save different stitches for yourself on just how you like them. Just go back and press a button and boom, it's there. It's really, once you learn the software on it, it makes it so easy. So for the piecers, it's a really exciting machine. But also, if you embroider, for example, the 5 millimeter gives you a tighter and a smaller. It's a true embroidery, according to Johannes, who is the key engineer in Switzerland. He's like, "Oh, you need to understand this. It's so amazing." And I'm like, "Okay." Like right over my head. But for people who are really into embroidery, the new module that came out, our SDT module, um, it's 50% faster when you're embroidering. So it's a huge difference and it's super quiet. So if you're a nighttime sewer, you're not going to wake up the family with your embroidery. Part of that I'm so excited about is if you are a quilter and you've been sending your quilts out to be finish quilted, the top of it, where you get the pattern on it, we have kind of reinvented and we call it computerized quilting. And it's using what would be traditionally an embroidery module, but we're calling it like an embroidery quilting module now because we're starting to include quilting designs in there then that you can go ahead. So if you're doing small quilts or table runners or something like that, it's amazing what you can do. And it's a great place to get started in that finished quilting. So that's relatively new for us. And we just came out with, we have all these big books. If you're not familiar with them, we have one of our district manager who likes to say, so when are we coming out with the big book of big books? But it's the big book of computerized quilting. And in it is all the techniques and how to do that. So if you're not quite ready to get into free motion on your domestic, which you can on all our quilting edition machines, that means turning your feed dogs off, right? So that you can move that stuff. You can do it quilting, the computerized quilting with that embroidery module and do that. And then once you get there or into the freehand quilting, the free motion quilting, then we've got the long arms, which are super amazing, which I know you're really excited to hear about. So we have a Q16, a Q20, and a Q24. And you're like, yeah, okay, so what does that mean? Well, when you're quilting, right, on a domestic machine, you have maybe, most machines are 10 inches. Some have 14 inches between, or 12 inches between the needle to the right of the needle. So if you're quilting on that, you're rolling up, constantly rolling, lifting the quilt up, and then you're quilting, right? The long arms are 16 inches, Q16, 20 inches deep, or 24 inches deep. Now, the cool thing that Bernina thought of that no other quilting company really does is our Q16, you can put that either on a table and start out small, or it will work hand driven on a frame. So our studio frame is super affordable, but still Bernina, the quality that you expect. And our machines grow with you. So you can start with a Q16 if you want to do automation, which is what everybody really desires, right? Push the button and it does it for you. The Q16 Plus does the same thing. It can go from that table to the frame to automation. So you can, we believe that it's an investment and we know it's an investment, but it can grow with you. But what a lot of people do then is they'll trade it in for the next size because, of course, you always want bigger and better. So the Q20 also fits on a table or a frame. And then we have the Q24 on the frame. And that's frame only because it's so big and so heavy. But bar none, the way that our quilting machines are set up, when you test drive one, and if you haven't and you've always wanted to do it, go to your local dealer and say, I really want to try this, and try just doing some free motion on it because it will change your life. It takes all the weight that you carry from doing on your domestic machine, takes it off of you, and you have more table space if you're using the long arm, because your long arm heads either come with the table, and there's many choices, or the frame. So we bundled it together because we don't want you to feel like you're not going to have everything that you need. So we try to think of everything that when you get this, it also has all of our quilting machines have our Bernina stitch regulator, which is what makes them special. And sure, some of our competitors have stitch regulation. Nobody beats Bernina stitch regulation. And if you've sewn on a Bernina, you understand why, because of the premium Swiss quality. So that's kind of what's new here for us. I know I went on a long time and I apologize, but I'm very passionate about this, as you can tell.
I love Michaelynn, like really is like, I'm like, they couldn't have chosen a better director of marketing because you love the product. You really love the product. I would love to kind of like take the whole idea of the long arm, because I don't own one. I'm always just fascinated by it. And when I go to Quilt Market, I'll go play on the machines a little bit, I would love Meg to talk a little bit about how you've talked to several long armors, right, on the podcast.
So several, we were talking about Marissa. She's a long armor. Amanda Murphy. There were probably 5 or 6 of them. And what they talk about is the freedom that this allows them to do in how they design things. And then they talk about how it's enabled them to just create. And to a person, Carina, it's interesting. They all say there's not perfection in doing this, that it's all, sometimes the little, what you would think is a mistake really isn't. It's a nuance. It's something that makes it personal. And every person who is a long arm or who has talked about their craft has mentioned this independent of each other. And it's, to use one of our sayings, it's what just sews it all together. There's that. All right, I'm going to say this again. It's a common thread. I had to get those in there. But I was waiting for that opportunity. But it's great just to talk about the passion of creativity.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that. I will, before we even started, Meg did say that she talked to the astronaut who sewed for the first time in space. I have to hear that. Tell us a little bit more about that and what episode that is.
So, I'm going to look over here for a minute because I have to look up what episode that was. It was episode number 11, and that was in July of 2021. Her name is Karen Nyberg. She does a lot of fabric design now, and she has a son who loved dinosaurs. So she incorporated dinosaurs and space, and she was the first astronaut to actually sew in space. And as I shared with you, Carina, when I was a little girl, I wanted to be an astronaut. And at that time, women just were not in the space program. So Karen was incredibly gracious. We did the episode, and then when we were done recording, I fessed up to just the fact that this it was like a rock star to me. And she spent a whole nother half an hour with me just saying what it was like to be an astronaut, what it was like to go through the training. And another woman that I spoke to was also she ran the group of women that were sewists for NASA, Jean Wright, and they created the thermal blankets that they put in the space shuttle that protected all the astronauts from re-entry. Jean's very prolific on social media. You can Google her and find her because she's still very involved with the space program. So out of doing stories about sewists and quilters, we had talked about how people are in the periphery of this, not your traditional use of sewing. I got to fulfill a childhood dream. It was pretty.
Oh my gosh,
awesome.
that is so cool. So cool. So Meg has done a lot with talking with long armors, but Michaelynn, can you tell us why do you think people really like long arms?
Well, I think they do it because it gives them total control of their creation. The finish quilting that goes on the top of it is really the final piece that makes the quilt. And by having a long arm, you can do whatever you want. You can make it dragons, you can make it flowers, you can do stippling, you can do anything, and you control that creative process. And people who do a lot of quilts and they send them out, having that finishing step done is minimally, $150 all the way up to $600 to do that. So if they're doing a lot of quilting, they probably are going to want a long arm so that they can, put their creative touch on it as well as save themselves, a lifetime of money.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I was just thinking every time I do, so I do ebook quilt books. And when I do that, I do 10 quilts. That's an arm and a leg. It's a long arm every time I send them out to get quilted. Well, I know we're kind of out of time, but I would love to let people know where they can find you guys if they want to learn more about Bernina. Let's start with Meg. Do you want to talk about the podcast?
Sure. There's a website, sewandsopodcast.com, SEWANDSO podcast.com. It's Bernina's site where they post all of the podcasts and pictures of all of the guests, and then photos that the guests have supplied showing their craft or their family or their community. It's pretty special.
Perfect. And then Michaelynn, where can they find more about Bernina and about long arms or any of these? I'm like kind of obsessed the idea of computerized, because I'm a free motion quilter on my little Bernina, but that there's computerized ways to do that now. But where could they find out more?
Well, the best place to start is bernina.com. And then from there, we also blog. We also have the podcast, and we have our dealers. And I would say if it's something you've always wanted to do, okay, you need to get into a dealer and you need to try or take a class on making a table runner. I mean, they even have things where you can the practice. Amanda Murphy makes practice pieces where you can follow along with your free motion, or you can do it on the long arm and follow with free motion on the long arm on the frame. So you can do it sit down or on the frame. But our dealers are an amazing resource, and many of our dealers are long arm certified, and we make them get certified so that they can help you learn about this and take the best care of your machine possible and offer the widest variety of classes. So
yeah. Oh my gosh. So good. You guys will put that in the show notes for you. So if you're looking for that, you can go check that out. We're so glad to have you guys both on the show. What a fun experience. You guys can also listen to an episode I do with Meg over on their podcast, if you guys want to go check that out. And we're just so glad you guys were here. We'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks for joining us. See you guys. Hey, did you know that you can visit me at makeanddesign.com to learn more about this podcast and join my VIP group for weekly freebies? I can't wait to see you there.